In this video, we're going to go through a really tough triple blank text completion here. And in this triple blank text completion, we're also going to be focusing on a blank where the answer maybe isn't that clear and you really have to think about it. And so oftentimes when you see a three blank text completion, the difficulty is, well, how do the two blanks, whether it be blank one and blank two, how do those relate to each other? And so you really have to figure that out. In this case, though, you don't really have to think too much about how the blanks relate to each other, but on one of the blanks, you do have to make a analytical decision here as to which word works best. And of course, this is very similar to a one blank text completion because you're trying to pick the best word out of five, which one really works the best. So this really is no different, but that same skill is still being applied even in a very, as you can see here, a very long and difficult text completion. So let's try. A successful revolution whereby those who have unseated the previous government are able to usher in an ironic transformation is not blank. Okay, at that point, we know our strategies. We don't really know what the answer can be. Therefore, we read on. We read deeply because maybe the clue is somewhere else, much further on in the paragraph. So nonetheless, notice the shift here. So it's shifting. So successful revolution is not blank. However, scholars persist in believing that the American Revolution, while clearly successful, don't be tricked here. This is a false shifter. They're just saying it was clearly successful, that it bequeathed a blank that all restive nations need only to follow to enjoy effective self-rule. So at this point, what can we determine? Anything about the first blank? Well, it says here that scholars believe that American Revolution, it was very successful, but it gave, and that's what the word bequeath means, kind of to hand down or hand over through time, gave a blank that restive, a very popular GRE word, which actually means restless, so definitely know this one, that restless nations only need to follow so they can be or enjoy effective self-rule. So you can see then that a successful revolution at the very beginning is not something that is typical. So is not typical. And now we can kind of complete the idea. Nonetheless, scholars and even the public at large persist in believing that the American Revolution gave us something, gave us this model that all nations just need to follow. All restless nations can follow, and they too will have glorious self-rule. But that is not the case, and why? Well, one must only look at the sweep of 20th century history to realize the blank of this conception. So let's focus on this blank for a moment to realize the what of this conception. Conception is idea or notion. What is it about this idea? Well, the idea that if you basically have a revolution and you have democracy, everything's going to be fine. Look at the 20th century and you can realize that there's a certain error in this idea. This idea is wrong. So we want a word that means wrong or error. Okay? Or erroneous, actually. I should change that. Erroneousness of this conception. Probably not the nicest sounding word grammatically, but again, we're going for the idea that the third blank is the wrongness of this conception. Okay, so what should we do? Well, let's go here and look first at the third blank, the futility. Now, futility is a tempting answer here, but does futility mean that something is wrong? Well, futility means that something is futile, that there's no point in trying to do something because you're going to lose or you're going to fail anyway. And that's not quite what we're going for here. There's maybe futility in countries who have tried ruling, but again, we're looking for that specific word that goes there. So ambiguity of this idea. We never said the idea was vague or ambiguous. We did say it was wrong, though, and that's what folly means. So there's one of our answers. Now, we can work back through the second blank, first blank. And again, here we were able to come up with our words. For the first blank, we want a word that's a synonym for typical, and that word is the norm. An aberration is something that's very atypical, usually in a negative sense. An archetype is similar to a model, but as we know, the model is basically showing up here in the second blank. So an archetype is an ancient model, something that goes way back, that's always been there, that people have always been able to copy, and it doesn't really, of course, relate to the first blank at all. The second blank, of course, is model. Maxim here is saying, and we're not saying that revolution, do this, that's a saying. Revolution following what the Americans did, that's a model. So they bequeath the model. Of course, the scholars are wrong in saying that. And so again, we want a word that means model. Notion is not correct. And the word template is a model. And there we have it. Again, these two words were, in order to come up with them, we had to use our usual techniques and make sure that we read all the way down to around this part to figure out what the first blank meant, and that these two blanks made sense together. And then it was the third blank where we had to really differentiate between futility and folly. And again, there is no one magic strategy really, or there's no one perfect text completion where if you go through it, you say, that's the perfect text completion. Now I can handle all text completions. Again, you follow your basic strategies, but there's always going to be various twists and turns. In this one, basically, it was difficult throughout, and you had to use analytical thinking. But again, as long as you look for clues and come up with your own words, that's a strategy that's going to help you across almost any text completion that you will come across.